Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel. Coco is exiled from this room once more, so I can kind of do this guerrilla camera work here to broadcast to you while I do some deck sleeving. The last video I did like this was my Regionals Ramblings video, which I posted right before I attended the Secaucus Regionals for September 2019. That seemed to go over pretty well. So just to kind of hang out with you guys a little more, give you a little more Weiss Shop talk, I will do what I think I'm going to call, and depending on the title, you'll see whether or not I went with that, a TableTech, where I'm going to just talk about a deck as I sleeve it. This particular deck is one that I probably will never do a complete deck tech for. It's probably one that you won't see too much on the channel. Just going to be one of those decks that's around, probably not something I'll take out now and again, but once in a blue moon I'll take it out because I feel like playing it. However, I do think it's really cool. You might think, well, if you're just going to play it 5-6 times, even in a year, why do you even have it? Well, I will answer that for you. It's cheap. It's very cheap. In fact, this is one of the, I would venture to say, most competitive decks you could build on a budget. That is why this deck is called Budget Burning Beatrice. Now, Beatrice is a character in ReZero, which is an anime I haven't watched, so I don't know anything about this girl or her mannerisms, but all you really need to know is that she is a very short girl with twin tails. I think that's upside down. That sure is. There we go. Short girl, twin tails, kind of that kind of character. This card makes that very apparent. This is our Brainstormer, by the way. And obviously in ReZero, even if you haven't seen the show, you know that the main characters are Rem, Ram, and Subaru. Just kidding. Rem, Ram, and Amelia. Those are your three main girls. They each have their own decks. They have their own double rares and SRs and SPs in the sets and everything. Beatrice is kind of a side character, kind of like Felt or Beetlejuice or whatever you call him. But thanks to set 2 for ReZero, she does have enough cards to make her own deck. And she actually got some pretty cool ones in ReZero too. So that said, I'd like to kind of bring attention to this deck because for what it's worth, which is actually something I'll talk about in just a second here, it's a pretty cool deck. So, as I kind of open these sleeves here, I kind of got these because they looked funny, because traditional Japanese art is funny looking. I was considering what Weiss Schwarz cost to play, and the answer to that is more than it did when I started. When I started Weiss Schwarz, my main deck was Soundless Voice. And Soundless Voice cost me about, because I singled it out, I think around $120 to build. I did do some trading for it. I did luck my way into like one or two big cards like a Miku Magician, which now has an absurd price tag considering the Diva has like no placement whatsoever. But the price of your average really good level 1 has really increased. Like my level 3s in that deck cost me about like $10 to $15 each. And that's just for the regular versions. That was back then. They're cheaper now. And the most expensive deck that I knew about back then was Kantai Collection 1. And that's when you had, the Akagis being 25 or 30, depending on where you got them. Those were your level 3s. Those were probably the most expensive level 3s in English Weiss at that point. Last Shot Xenon was there too, but I don't think she ever got up to 30 bucks. I could be wrong on that. But the point was, even to build the most expensive deck in the format, which was likely Kantai Collection, you probably weren't going to pay more than $250, which for a competitive deck, like a meta competitive deck for one of the most expensive sets in a card game, relatively, that's pretty cheap. I know $250 for some Magic decks when I was playing was about the price of your land base, even in Standard and Modern, which is crazy when you think about it. Weiss Schwarz, on the other hand, not only do these decks cost significantly less than MTG or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or sometimes even Force of Will. Force of Will is kind of a bad example, forget I said that, but the point is, these decks were pretty competitively priced if you wanted to play a card game without, like, destroying your bank account. Nowadays, the more competitive decks have gotten a lot more expensive. Now you have My Wallet to Bear Aaron commanding a price tag of $40, Bunny Girl Union commanding a price tag of anywhere to $30, $40. You have the level 3 Megamine, which is $50 depending on where you look, and you need 2 or 3 of those to build the Konosuba deck, not to mention the Bunny Girl Unions, the Ambush Unions, and oh my goodness, the Mesmerizing Beauty Aquas that are like $20 now. The price tag has gone way up on some of these competitive decks for the newer sets, and there's no denying that. You know, I might do a discussion video about the price of Weiss Schwarz sometime in the future, but I just really wanted to give you a little perspective here, because this deck, if you would just single it out, if you were shrewd about the prices, you could probably get this deck for about as much as 1 copy of My Fate to Bear Aaron. Definitely less than a copy of Megumin from Konosuba Set 1. I think once I got myself like a Brainstormer just by chance through trade, valued about $8, I realized, oh, I'm like 3 Brainstormers away and like 20 bucks away from this entire deck, so why not? You know, I like collecting Weiss Schwarz decks, so I did. And you know, as I built it and looked through it, it became more interesting to me than I thought it would. Because let me tell you something about this deck. A, it's got some really interesting cards that remind me of other cool stuff that I remember from other games, even like MTG. I'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But its level 3 package is pretty interesting because it is actually one of the most single burn heavy level 3 packages in English Weiss. There's only really one set that has as many instances of just burn 1 at the top end in English, and that's Prisma Ilia with Kaleidoscope. But granted, you need 4 of the same climax in your hand to kind of equal that when you start your finishing turn, which, I mean, come on, that's just crazy. But this deck is a little better at that because you only need 1 climax and you just need a little stock. And this deck isn't really expensive in the stock department, which is really nice. So I figured, why not go over it? So without further ado, I'm gonna sleeve this up. Instead of listening to some like Eurobeat or watching Initial D WebM meme compilations, I'll talk with you, introduce you to the deck, and walk you through it. This is Budget Burning Beatrice. So, right underway, kind of separate out the level 0 here and start sleeving. Level 0 suite's pretty simple. Like I said, Beatrice is a minor character in ReZero, at least in the Weiss Schwarz set. I don't know about the anime because, again, I didn't watch it. But she has enough cards for you to have some choices when you build, but her build itself is pretty straightforward when you're going to build the Beatrice deck, as it were. So it's a lot of 4-ofs, and not too much tech, but Beatrice has tech completely unique to herself. In fact, there are some English cards, well, I said that in reverse. There are some Beatrice cards that really don't exist anywhere else in English. So let's just start going over these. First of all, this level 0 is 1500, gets plus 2k power, and when it comes in, you can pitch a card to salvage a card called Forbidden Library, which is a 2-1 event in the deck. It's pretty central to the deck strategy, so it's nice. And what's also nice is this is a pretty beefy level 0 for that. It's 3/5 base with about no downside, at least on your turn. I mean, that's tough to argue with. Next up, we have Stamping Feet Beatrice. I only run 2 of these to round out my numbers. I'm running 17 level 0s in this deck. That's about the number I find to work best for me when I'm just kind of constructing a deck off the top of my head. Worth mentioning, I haven't actually played this deck yet. I don't know if this is my final build. Like I said, I probably won't go back and touch on it somewhere in the future for the channel. So while I'm sleeving it, it's a good opportunity to just introduce it. Anyway, Stamping Feet Beatrice, base 2/5 level 0. When another character reverses a character on your side of the stage. Sorry, I had a frog in my throat there. This gets plus 2k. Pretty cool, considering you have other 3/5s in the deck. So, just to reiterate, if you reverse something else while this is on the stage, it gets plus 2k till the end of turn. So it's a 4/5 if you can get a reverse off. Again, not bad. I only run 2 to round out my numbers though. This is the most expensive card in the deck. Next up, this is your Brainstormer. Tap self, salvage Brainstormer, not bad. And when another one of your characters becomes reversed in battle, you can give something 500. Pretty basic for a Brainstormer, but it's a tap self salvage, and that's pretty much what you want in this Beatrice deck anyway. Now granted, you could probably splash in other red cards if you wanted to, even some blue cards if you wanted to get more adventurous with the Beatrice build, but this is definitely the cheapest way to build the deck while still kind of maintaining that consistency that we want. At least I think so. I'd always encourage you players to experiment and see what you can come up with. Next up, Sulking Beatrice. This is a base 4K. When it comes in, if your opponent has 3 or more climaxes in the yard, it gets rested. That's a pretty good downside for a base 4K. Generally, you know, when you begin the game, if your opponent has 3 climaxes in the waiting room already, they have bigger problems than you would ever have just trying to play a rested character. And you can see that downside right away too. So you can clock her. There's going to be no way or no scenario where your opponent's going to have more climaxes in the waiting room during the point in your turn where you went to play this card and then suddenly it didn't work. So that's, you know, it's controllable, it's predictable, and it's, again, high power. Beatrice has surprisingly high power in her level 0 package, which is another thing that's really cool about this deck. Not many reversers, no stock kickers, no clock swaps, just some classic high power. And you know, a lot of the times that's good enough. This one is an example of a card that does not have high power, though. This is Door Crossing Beatrice. When this card is placed on the stage from your hand, you mill the top 2 cards of your deck. If you mill a climax, you get to salvage a character. She's just kind of in here for the chance salvage. She's just a 1K base. But again, it's kind of a cool card. It can be just a free salvage on play, which is pretty cool. You know, even if you would open with her, unless you milled 2 climaxes, you know, then what are you gonna do? It's Weiss. So let's count up my level 0 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16, I knew I was missing one. Where's my other level 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay. Guess I was suspicious over nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. How is this possible? 1, okay, because I didn't pick up one. That's how it's possible. Because I haven't sleeved these in double sleeves yet, so they feel a little different. I usually don't handle character sleeves just on their own. These are not character sleeves, but it's kind of the same idea. They're just the plastic sleeves with the printed on art, just like any anime character sleeves, but you usually protect them with oversleeves. Not these oversleeves, these are the bad oversleeves. You know, if you watched my preparing for regionals video, you know how much I hate these, but they're what I have at the moment, so it's whatever. Anyway, let's not complain about those anymore. Let's just go right into the level 1 here. Level 1 has some interesting cards, and I want to start with the level 1 combo for Beatrice. Beatrice actually has a level 1 combo in set 1 and set 2. The set 1 combo, when she attacks, you mill the top card. If it's a magic character, you get to salvage one. And is it magic character event? Point is, you know, that's basically what it does. This one is a little different. Comes in, gets some power, and when it attacks, if you've got this climax in your climax zone, which is a red stock soul, you get to mill the top 2 cards of your deck. Your opponent chooses one, puts it into your hand, either an event or character. You put the rest in the waiting room. The reason I really like this card is because it reminds me of the MTG card Factor Fiction, and Factor Fiction was always really fun to use. You know, it's pretty much undeniable +1 advantage. There's very low chance that this is going to miss, which is pretty nice. It happens on attack. You don't have to reverse anything. And I don't think there's any combo in English that is quite like this one. A lot of it's just kind of straight top checking. This, of course, is not as good as straight top checking, but the element of making your opponent choose, kind of getting in their head a little bit, does kind of appeal to me because I used to play a lot of blue in Magic the Gathering, and it reminds me of that. So I want to experiment with this. I don't know if I'll prefer it over the other combo yet, but this is what I'm going with offhand. So let's sleeve those up. We'll talk about the other level 1s here. I'm only running 8 level 1s because this is actually a pretty top-heavy deck. This next level 1 is a 3K. On your turn, gets +1K, and it's a level 1 or lower reverser. It's not cost 0, just level 1, so it can deal with a lot of those problematic 1/1s, which is nice. I don't know if I'm going to bump this up to a 4 of and take this one out or bump up my level 1 game a little bit. That's going to depend on how the deck kind of pans out in my first few games testing with it, but we'll see. You've also got this 1/1 here. Again, I'm just kind of experimenting with these two, see which one I like better. But both of them aren't bad cards. 1/1, if you have 2 or more other, gets +1K. At the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, you can actually pay 1 and switch this card with another card. So you can actually move this to the back row, put something up there, you know, save something from a losing battle. It's useful. It's not a free runner, but it does exchange, which is nice. You don't have to have an open spot. And that's our level 1 game. That really wraps it up. Now, admittedly, that's not really the most interesting part of the deck. We're going to get into that in a second here when we look at level 2. First, let's look at Forbidden Library, because that's really the showcase of the Beatrice deck and why a lot of people choose to play the Beatrice deck. Forbidden Library has 2 versions, one from set 1, one from set 2. The one from set 2 is way better. And it says, rest one of your stand characters with Beatrice in its name. Choose a character with Beatrice in its name that is level 2, return it to your hand. And then you may put a character with Beatrice in its name from your hand to the stage and put this card in memory. Now, you don't have to think about that too hard to say, okay, so you play a level 2, like this one, to the stage, you play another stock, put this event in your memory, take this one back to your hand, and play a level 3 at level 2. Pretty cool. It turns all your level 3s into early play. It does cost a card from hand, but still pretty interesting. It gets you a lot of big power, it gets you some early burn if you want. You don't have to use it, it's just good potential, and it synergizes well with our backup here actually, because you are running, well at least I'm running, 3 of this backup because this is a pretty interesting 2-1 backup. Again, not many cards like it in Weiss Force, so as I sleeve at least English Weiss. You know, always when I say in Weiss Force, I generally mean English Weiss. You guys know that I only play English. So as I sleeve these up, I'll kind of explain. Just kidding, I'm already done. 2-1 backup. Drill, hairstyle girl, Beatrice. 2-1, 2500 backup, but you can pay 2 when you use it to deal your opponent 1 damage, which can be cancelled. So you can actually kill your opponent on their turn while they're attacking with this card, which is pretty funny. There's not many decks that allow you to do that. There's a 2-1 backup in Love Life Sunshine that mills 5, and if your opponent's 3-6 with not many cards in deck, that can kill them. This is just like doing a damage on your opponent's turn with a backup. That's pretty funny. And it's pay 2, doesn't cost you cards from hand. So what's nice about this is you're running 3 of this backup because it's pretty funny. You can play it to the stage, but it goes back to your hand if you use Forbidden Library. So, you know, it does kind of take away that surprise element of a backup, but your opponent still has to play around it even though they know you have it. Of course, that means things are going to turn out better for you, at least you'd hope. But again, it's an instance of burn 1 at level 2, and pretty much all the level 3 burns 1 as well, multiple times in fact. We're going to see that in just a minute here. But again, this is the second most heavy burn English deck I think there is. Not in terms of sheer numbers, that would be, you know, Megamine Explosion, which is crazy. I think we calculated that out to be, what, 31 damage in a turn potentially? But if you have enough stock and you use backups, you can actually burn 1 probably around 10 or 11 times between you and your opponent's turn, you know, if you use 1 or 2 of these backups, which is pretty nuts considering you still have attacks too. One last level 2 to go over here. This is a level assist if you want to play it. And if you have one of your level 3s out, it becomes a level 3 reverser, which is pretty cool because, again, your level 3s can be put out at level 2. So if you need to reverse another early play, you can play one of yours with Forbidden Library, play this in front of their early play, get a lot of advantage that way. At least it seems that way on paper. I don't know until I've actually played it. Like I said, just sleeving this up right now, figured I'd take some time to share it since I am. So let's talk about the level 3 package. From set 1, you've got a double R, cute girl Beatrice. She is the one that synergizes with pouting Beatrice. She comes in, she heals, and if all of your other characters are magical weapons, she gets plus 2k, so she's a base 11k, which is pretty good. Also, at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, if a card named Forbidden Library is in your memory, then you can pay 1 and exchange 2 other cards as stand, and this card gets plus 1k. So it's kind of like our 1-1 here, but obviously way bigger. You still pay the 1, but it also gives itself another 1k. So it becomes a base 12k, and considering you're running a 2-5 backup, that's pretty funny. And by funny, I mean gigantic. So let's sleeve those up. I'm not running 4 of those because obviously it's not really your main finisher, but it is a healer, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna see if I might cut this down a little bit. I might run 2 of these in favor of, 3 of these instead, and maybe even cut down the top end. We'll see. Again, these are just kind of your potential choices. This is what I'm going through for my first kind of run here. Second level 3 here, this is actually a shop promo. When this card is placed onto your hand, onto the stage from your hand, you can top check if it's a character, you know, a magic character, but they're all magic. You get to burn 1. And when it's placed on the stage from your hand, you get to give something plus 1500. Pretty simple. Come in, free burn if you top check a character. Get some extra power. The deck does get pretty big. Like I said, even at level 0, you have, you know, pretty overstated characters for pretty much no downsides. And at level 3, you have like a base 11k healer. You have this, which gets bigger when it comes in. The healer also runs and makes things bigger. Will make itself bigger, I guess, but you know, power is relative. Let's talk about this card, because this card was actually the main reason I wanted to look into the Beatrice deck. We have Unexpected Mischief Beatrice, and the reason I like this card so much is because it's actually a lot like to seize Freedom Mikasa from Attack on Titan, which right now is probably one of the top 5 finishers in the game. You know, perhaps top 3. It depends on what strategy you're kind of dealing with here. But it has 2 burns just like to seize Freedom Mikasa. When it comes in, you can pay 1 and just burn your opponent. You know, no top checking, no climax combo, whatever. It comes in, you pay an extra 1, you burn 1. Also, it has the climax combo with this gate here, that when it attacks, if you have this climax, 2 or more other characters, this gets plus 3500, and the ability, when you reverse a character, you burn 1. So instead of paying the 1 after you reverse a character, or rather 2 in I guess Mikasa's case, you just pay an extra 1 when it comes in. That's a little harder because you have to pay it before you start attacking, because you don't build up that attack stock like you do with Mikasa. But he does get a lot of power when he comes in. Well, I guess when she comes in, he, she, you know, there's 2 people on this card. Who are they? Point is, it's 2 burns, and it's relatively low cost for 2 burns. You've got your climax combo that gives it power and reverse burn, not to mention you can pay 1 for an extra burn when it comes in. So like I said, if you attack with 3 of these, that's 6 instances of burn 1 if you reverse 3 opponents, which you're basically going to try to do on 14-5, because 1k plus 3-5 plus 10. And that's not a bad place to try to reverse even level 3s. Not only that, if you wanted to, you could even play one of these if you had the extra stock, which you mostly do because almost nothing in the deck costs stock. If you play one of those, get these, you could have like 10 instances of burn 1, throw in one of these backups, you know, when you're kind of on the swing back, if they survive, burn an extra 1, maybe even an extra 2, depending on your stock situation. Not bad. Not bad if I do say so myself. You know, I really like this level 3. And like I said, if you want to play cards like to seize Freedom Mikasa, but you can't afford to seize Freedom Mikasa, or much less My Fate to Bear Aaron, for the price of 1 Aaron, you can play with this deck. Granted, the level 1 here is no My Fate to Bear Aaron. Don't make any mistake about that. That is not what we're dealing with here. But we are dealing with a pretty interesting deck on a whole. So, sleeve up these climaxes here. Maybe do a little playtesting while the camera's on. You know, this has already gone on 20 minutes. Unfortunately, when I do these rambling videos, they seem to go on longer than a regular deck tech. Now, granted, they don't take nearly as much effort to make, but, you know, I still like doing deck techs in my regular format. In fact, I'm working on one right now. I just did some filming for that, and I'll be doing some more filming after I sleeve. So look forward to that. Hopefully, if I'm not lazy, that'll be coming out soon. But other than that, we had the Beatrice deck in front of us, so, you know, I would say why don't we talk more about it, but there's really not too much else to discuss. Like I said, it's a budget deck. It has a lot of heavy top-end burn. It does have that really cool element of being able to burn your opponent on their turn with your backup. It's not too stock heavy. So it's got a lot of good things going for it. It seems like a really fun deck to play. In fact, one guy at my locals did play me with this, and it was pretty interesting to watch. You know, obviously, since he was playing it in the tournament, it was a little different. I didn't get to see probably what it could do if I was just playing, you know, another mean deck against it or something, but still, it gave me a run for my money for what it's worth, even though I was playing a pretty serious deck. Oops. That's why I wasn't going in. You know, it definitely wasn't a free match. And that's what I'd really like to remind you of as I sleeve this up. No matter what you are playing in Weiss Schwarz, anything can win. You know, I was at September Regionals, and there was a guy in the fifth round who I played against, and you can again see that in my Regionals report, who was 3-1 with Gate of Babylon Gilgamesh. And that's not known for being like a strong meta deck. However, you know, the point is, you can win with just about anything in Weiss Schwarz because the balance is pretty close between set to set. Obviously, newer sets, higher power generally when it comes to card advantage, but Titan can still lose to a set like Excel World Set 1. Just kidding, nothing loses to Excel World Set 1, but Titan can lose to an older set like, let's say, Kill la Kill or Log Horizon. And Kill la Kill and Log Horizon are two sets that have really interesting decks that I might touch on the channel at some point. I'm not sure yet. You know, there's a lot of content to make. I've got a lot of decks. In fact, I'm rounding out about 60 decks right now. Yes, you heard that right. 60 decks. Crazy. You know, I'm just... Jesus Lord. Even when I say it, that sounds terrible to me. And, you know, coming this December, I'll have more. I'll be upping my Fate decks that I have 3 of right now to be a little more up to date, and I'll be adding a Sakura deck, and of course you have Goblin Slayer, and I'll be adding 3 more with that. 4 more technically, if you count what I'm making extra. And if you watch my Goblin Slayer preview video, you'll see what that is. Man, I forgot how long sleeving takes, I'll tell you what. But again, this is why I wanted to kind of just take a moment to share what's going on, share the deck, because while I could sit here, sleeve the deck, watch some YouTube like I used to do, I figured, why not set up the camera? Why not do some talking, since I do have some shop talk to talk about Weiss with you guys? And again, introduce you to a deck that I probably won't cover too much more on the channel. You might see a game of it, but that's probably going to be it. One that I won't really revisit for a serious deck tech, but one that's worth shouting out. You know, I'm not really big on Twitter yet. I do have a Twitter account. I'm thinking about remaking it so I can actually properly brand myself. So I probably won't even link that, to be honest. But I wouldn't want to just tweet about this deck. I think it's worth at least kind of explaining, going over the cards a little bit, and kind of going over your main strategy, why it's good, why I like it, and why I own it. And this is perfect for that, because sleeving, as anyone who knows or has sleeved double sleeve deck, takes a long time sometimes. You know, as you can see, we've already gone, what is this, 27 minutes? That's nuts. Like I said, that's longer than my normal deck techs. So, as I'm kind of closing out, sleeving the rest of this, I will talk a little bit about the price progression of Weiss, because it's something, again, I might do a discussion on in the future. In fact, if I ever find myself in a collaboration with other Weiss YouTubers, I might be interested to get their input for the pricing of Weiss and what their experience with how Weiss has impacted them financially, or, you know, just how they perceive the price of the game in general, or the direction it's going in that regard. Secondary market and primary market, you know, kind of both perspectives, I guess. I don't know what I was going to say with that. It just didn't really work at the end. Again, sorry, I'm not really used to these freeform videos yet. But, you know, hopefully, as I get more practice, they'll be a little more interesting to watch. Little more interesting to listen to, a little cleaner, I hope. But for now, this is what I have, this is what I'm making, and just kind of felt like doing it. If you enjoy it, fair enough. If you don't, well, there are plenty of other videos on the channel to enjoy when it comes to Weiss content. But anyway, I digress. I was just going to talk briefly about the price of Weiss Schwarz. So my perspective of card games comes a lot from Magic the Gathering. I've said that before, I'll say it again, and Magic the Gathering is a notoriously expensive game. If you've never played Magic the Gathering, there are cards in Magic that are played actively in one of the formats called Legacy, and they can cost $500 and up for a single copy, and you might run 4 copies in your deck. Granted, they're pretty uncommon, but still, lands, which are a very basic part of your deck in Magic the Gathering, about 33% of your deck in any given deck is going to be lands. One of those lands in a 60 card deck, by the way, it is 60 cards, not 50 cards like it is in Weiss. One of those lands in Legacy can cost you about now I think $600. And that's pretty fucking nuts, I'm not gonna lie. Price is one reason I got out of Magic the Gathering. I just thought it was getting a little too insane. Granted, it's not nearly as insane as Vintage, where you have a card called Black Lotus, which literally costs, you know, anywhere upwards from $15,000, but we won't talk about that. There are plenty of channels on YouTube that are talking about Magic right now. I don't want to be one of them. You know, that's not a pool I've dipped my feet in for a long time. My input really isn't too valuable there at this point. I never really went pro with Magic, not that I really went pro with Weiss anyway, but it's a much bigger pool with much bigger fish. So I won't take up any of their ground. What I will say is that playing Magic gave me an experience of what a card game is like price-wise. When I started Magic, I was actually in college, and I was a poor college student, just kind of relying on what I had at the moment, kind of scrounging up. When, you know, whatever was in my bank account, you know, whatever was left, that's basically what I had. It wasn't like I was working anything more than a part-time job. I did work full-time over the summers, but, you know, still, that's not going to give you much income when you're just a college student coming home from the summer. And Magic the Gathering was an expensive game, so I made a lot of my progress in it by trading. And that's why I like trading in Weiss Schwarz too, because I have a lot of good experiences with Magic the Gathering, having traded a lot of cards. But back when I was playing Magic, the average cost of a standard deck, which was the format that was probably most played in Magic, I think, by that time. A lot of people were playing standard. I think that's what most tournaments were. I think that's fair to say. Was about anywhere from $150 to $300, sometimes more or less depending on the set. There were a few sets where the meta decks got up to like $400, $500 just for a standard deck. And like I said, that can be the price of one legacy card, which is a different format, but still very popular. Magic, unlike Weiss, the cards rotate out of standard. So when a set comes out, other sets that are older will no longer be legal to play in a certain format, which is standard. They will only be legal to play in Modern and Legacy. But enough about that. My point is that when I was introduced to Weiss Schwarz, it was actually a lot cheaper than Magic the Gathering was ever for me. You know, by miles. Like I said, I think I only paid ballpark $100 out of pocket to build my Soundless Voice deck. And Project Diva, for what it's worth, back in the day was not exactly a cheap set. It wasn't up there like Kantai, back when only Kantai set 1 was out and you had just Sword Art, Kantai, Kill la Kill, which actually was more of an expensive deck back then. It kind of still is, but not as much as it was. But it was much easier on the wallet than Magic ever was, and that was one part that really dug me into it. Not only could you buy a deck for a very small amount of money comparatively, but that deck will be good forever. And I can still get out a lot of my older decks, including my old Soundless Voice deck, which has almost no level 3s in it that can finish the game. I can still, you know, go toe-to-toe with a lot of good decks. You know, I would say even my Fate to Bear Aaron would have some trouble reversing my Lens. You know, if I were to play my Soundless Voice deck against a Titan deck. And let me tell you something, Kantai still has trouble with it. So you have Kantai, Titan. I don't know how Konosuba would do against it, but speaking of Konosuba and Titan, it's a good time to mention that these are sets that really started upping the bar for what it costs to get into a meta deck for Weiss Schwarz. When my Fate to Bear Aaron came out, I think he was like $25. He's now somewhere around $40 a pop. Some sites who actually do have him in stock will demand like $50 for one copy of him. Same with a level 3 Megamine from Konosuba set 1. Then you have, of course, the Megamine from set 2, Detonative Dame. You have the Aqua from set 2, Mesmerizing Water Goddess. And the prices on those are just insane. Like, just for a playset of those, that will be the price of a lot of Weiss Schwarz decks, maybe 2 or 3 years ago in English. Granted, the English Weiss scene is still relatively new. The game has gone on in Japan for a lot longer than it has in English over here in the States, and we have a very small percentage of all the Weiss Schwarz content available to us in English. So we work with what we have. We're still kind of a young community, still kind of small, especially as compared to the Japanese community. You know, I know on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, by the way, if you hadn't figured that out, there is a lot more Japanese Weiss. There's some here, but not nearly as much. But in English, like I said, younger format, we're still seeing how expensive the game will shape up to be, whether or not it's going to get more expensive. You might see cards coming out that might be $50 out of the gate, which would be pretty insane. Hopefully not. You know, I don't think I would like to see the game go in that direction. I don't think I'd like to see the secondary market go in that direction, because singling out decks and then experimenting would just get more, you know, hard. It would just get harder. There's going to be more barriers to entry because, of course, money is everything. Money solves all problems, regardless of what people tell you. Having more money will solve basically all your problems, including your lack of Weiss Schwarz decks. But depending on how much money you have, you might not be able to solve that problem with later sets. We'll see. I know that the Goblin Slayer set that I was looking at for this January, I was checking the price of level 1 Goblin Slayer, and it was 40,000 yen. In Japanese, and Japanese cards are generally cheaper than English, so I'm really afraid that this thing is going to be like 50 bucks out of the gate. I won't lie, I'm kind of afraid of that. But I'm getting some boxes of my own. We'll open them up, see what we get, and you know, it's going to be fun. I've got box openings to do in December and January. We're doing something very special for the box opening in December when it comes to Heaven's Feel, so look forward to that. And for now, like I said, I'm working on another deck tech right now, and tomorrow I'm going to go to my locals, see how this does, maybe record a game of it, maybe not, we'll see. But for now, that's all. So as always, thanks for watching. Peace.